The Last Remnant was developed by Square Enix. Originally came out on Xbox 360 in 2008. 2009 for PC, but that version got delisted. But this is the remaster that came out in 2018 for PlayStation 4 and 2019 for Nintendo Switch. With this being their big jump to using Unreal Engine and trying to be a big worldwide title that has mixed results, considering a lot of people talk about The Last Remnants, and also the idea of being a war-based RPG where instead of just controlling one unit in battle, you instead control entire mini armies instead. I do also to note the fact that the original release and the remaster have quite a bit of differences whatever what units you get, enemies being stronger in the remaster, or especially when it comes to enemy placement, which will become very important later. Also the fact that, from what I've seen, in the remaster you can save anywhere, when the original you only had certain save points. So when the save points still exist in the remaster, they're only used just to leave locales, so you can save anywhere, and the game does warn you if you're about to save in a situation where you'll be stuck at a boss fight, and warning you to make an extra save, which is a nice warning they included. Our main premise that in this fictional world, there are these ancient powerful artifacts referred to as remnants that can come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and what they do. One example is the gay Bolg, that's how they pronounce it, so I'm running with it, essentially being a mini nuke that one of the characters, David, carries around, and that's a remnant bound to him, with remnants need to be bound to a certain person, because if they go unbound for too long, the remnants can eventually just start spawning in monsters into the world, with the remnants being these objects that people fight over, but also use to protect their own lands. Our protagonist Rush Sykes and his sister Irina end up getting attacked, with mysterious attackers kidnapping Irina, and when Rush sees her when appears to be on a battleground, tries to rush in after her, ends up inadvertently helping David Nassau, who is the ruler of the city of Athlum. And because assisting him and understanding his plan to look for his sister, David allows Rush to essentially join their army in assistance to help fight Irina, while Rush also offers him his services because the talisman he has seems to have mysterious abilities, one of which allows him to slow down time for a bit, which kind of goes understood considering how much of a crazy ability that is. But either way, David decides to help Rush, and Rush helps David in return. I do like the fact that early on, their goals aren't perfectly aligned, where David does want to help fight Irina, but it's not like his main goal. His main goal is doing stuff for his city-state Athlum. So there is a point early on where Rush decides, you know what, I'll just focus on fighting my sister, you do whatever you gotta do, in order to help explain the unit mechanic, how you form them. I do also like the fact that the characters know that Rush will immediately run into danger if his sister is somewhat involved, and they do try to stop him, sometimes succeeding, but it's the fact that they put in the effort to realize he's about to do something very dangerous, someone grab him right now. Later on, you have the Conqueror, who is this game's villain, and immediately makes it known he is the villain of the story by immediately demanding that all the cities of the world offer him essentially a copy of each of the massive remnants that each city-state has, and when his request of course gets rejected, he immediately declares war against everyone and gains support of the God Emperor, who is this legendary figure that all the city-states essentially cower to. So David's play is that he wants to prevent this war to Conqueror, while Rush's play is that he wants to rescue his sister, who's for some reason being used in order to obtain more remnants. Something that's usually not done, considering people can't just take remnants as someone else is already bound to. The main story Last Remnant is fine, like nothing's really bad about it. I don't find anything particularly interesting when it comes to the main narrative specifically. I will say there's some issues with several instances where it comes to, we're here to save the day, oh, villain left. And like, it's like, okay, that early on becomes a bit much, but when it comes to the main plot, It's alright. Like I said, I don't really have anything particular good or bad to really say about the characters or anything, because there's not really characters really stand out. I'm talking about specifically for the main plot, because this game does have a lot of extra story and lore if you are doing the side quests and the stuff you do in those, including the fact that some of the side quests do also have you stopping entire wars or protecting entire city-states from invaders and stuff like that. So the side quests themselves are also very important to do if you want to get more out of the world, especially since there's many places you'll never go to in the game unless you are doing the side quests, because there's many things in this game that are missable, entire locales or entire sections of locales that you go to in the story, but the side parts are completely missable, including side quests for the main cast themselves. So while the main story that gives you a lot of them with the focus on the war against the Conqueror, you do get more things to learn about them with these one-on-one side quests that they go on with Rush. So there's aspects like that to help us with the characters. I just don't really feel like the writing in this game is really anything truly remarkable, but it gets the job done, so not really any complaint from me. I will say that it feels weird that with the abilities Rush's talisman offers him, it feels weird that he too wasn't a target along with Irina, or the fact that his parents are famous remnant researchers at the academy, and there is a risk of potentially them being in danger because of their knowledge and fame. But once again, feels like it doesn't really matter a whole lot in the grand scheme, because the main target the villains have is just Irina and no one else. Now for the gameplay, it is big award-based RPG. So you have unions, which can be made up of 5 units at max. These unions essentially have the leader, whose abilities can influence what they will do. So if you have a leader who's more combat focused, then the other characters will start using more combat skills with the options given. The more magic focused, you'll have more magic options, healing focus, item focus, etc, etc. So it's very important that the leader you have really matches up with the units you are giving them in order to direct. I do say direct because you cannot pick individual skills of what each unit will go with. You can only pick the command that will tell them what to do, and you can see what they will pick to do, but you cannot control exactly what they will do, so it's up to the game to decide with the amount of AP you have, what skills they will do. You do get the option that, interestingly, is play by ear, which has them characters do whatever they feel is best, and you don't even know what they will do under this option, but it does also allow the variety of the fact that they can also switch tactics, so if something happens, let's say now they need healing, they can switch their mind to instead using a healing item or a healing spell, in order to give them more leeway. Once again, play by ear is more the wild card option, since now you have even less control of what they will do. The Union's characters also all comprise the health bar, so each one being hit will also deplete the health bar, making stuff such as AoE skills that hit multiple people very dangerous, since that's each hit per person that depletes the health bar, and once the health bar goes down, the entire unit falls. However, individual units can be KO'd as well, and if the leader is knocked out, it puts the unit into a bot state where they essentially have no direction and don't know what to do. So they'll either do something random or just do nothing because they don't know what to do. You also have fighting enemies, which can do many things, such as put to a deadlock where the enemy and your union are basically locked into each other, a multiple deadlock for a boss who can somehow handle multiple units coming at them from multiple sides, don't ask me how it works, or flanking them because when the unit is distracted, then you can do a flank attack, which will how you do extra damage, and the enemy can't fight back, so you gain a jump on them. You can also just have many enemy units just attack one of yours, and it can be a massive flank that can deal more and more damage, so best to have the enemy units at least distracted by something that allow them to just jump your unions entirely, because the easier the fight they have, the higher the damage they'll do. One thing that does bug me is the fact that the tutorials tell you some of this information when it comes to the different kinds of flanks and everything, but if you were to get a game over in that fight, the game will essentially run it as integrated info, so you have to basically be in these very bad scenarios for the tutorial to pop up, and then still win the fight in order to not have the game tell you again how that mechanic works. It's a bit weird to that situation where you're massively getting destroyed. You're not exactly gonna win, now are you? You also have the morale gauge, which, depending on where it sways, will either buff your units or buff the enemy units, so it is important to try to keep the morale at least somewhat favorable, although there are skills that either you can get to increase the morale, or there are certain boss fights that just flat out have a skill solely designed to immediately put the morale in the enemy favor, already pushing your units at disadvantage. The morale isn't a make or break thing, but it is something that you should keep an eye on and try to manipulate if you are able to. You also have the Remnants, which will be your most powerful attacks, although how to trigger them is a bit weird, because you usually require a lot of AP, but then there are also the requirements that either don't make sense or just feel completely random, because I can have all the AP in the world in order for David to use the game Bolg, and he won't, but then there are points where he'll just immediately have it as a first option, or we'll have the option later to do it multiple times in a row. Same also goes with certain spells you can do that require a combination of spells, such as the spell Blackout, that requires 3 people in order to use, and for most of the time I used it, it was just having David's unit just cast magic, and then they'll do the spells required to cast Blackout. But there are other times where Blackout was its own specific option to immediately command them to do, and there's just stuff like that. There are situations where Rush will have multiple abilities he can do uniquely, but the game will prioritize one over the other, or want to do its offensive one, it'll give me a defensive one. Or one later we can summon this ally called Cyclops, but sometimes he will immediately start a boss fight with the option, other times he won't. Also the fact that you can't control who the target of the attack is. The game already has in mind which unit will be the one that the recipient. If you try with someone else, then the option won't be there anymore, unless it's something like the game Bolg, which hits everyone on the battlefield, so it doesn't matter who it's being pointed at. So another weird quirk where just your ultimate attacks are really not only up to randomness, it's also up to randomness of who the game decides should be the recipient of the attack. Lastly, you also have QTEs in the game, which I immediately turn the option to make them automatic, because of the fact that the QTEs not only are truly random, where a character can have a basic attack that does like 2 smacks, and then the QTE can appear on the first or second smack, on top of the fact that the QTEs are like 1 second, required to do them very fast for a 2-button input, that basically goes faster than I can actually even humanly react to, let alone even know what buttons to push. I do know that I believe the buttons always remain the same for the weapon type, so you know what weapon type needs the QTEs, then it'll be a lot easier for you, but I see many people just don't want to deal with that, just put the automatic option, even if it does mean that whether or not it succeeds is now up to the RNG factor of the game, now fulfilling the QTEs for you. But there is also a good reason to do them, which is the fact that it not only buffs your damage when you're doing offense, but on defense, it can make it to where your character can do a counterattack that either does massive damage or can make it to the enemy get stunned. Unless they're a boss who's immune to both, because screw you, now the QTEs mean nothing. But just an extra thing for winner fights that can help sway things in your favor, or help finish off a union that was almost defeated. You also have the side quests, which for most of them, the game automatically teleports you to the side quest location in order to complete it and teleports you back. For other side quests, you have to manually go to towns or locales where to find it, and there are many towns and dungeons in this game you can find. You can just go into a dungeon field and just pick a direction and probably find another dungeon or another town on the world map because you went that direction, showing how connected the world is even with this format of world map and these dungeons. And it is super cool how the game handles that when it comes to how characters will mention, go to this dungeon and go east or west or wherever and you'll get to a new locale. There's one locale that was specifically story blocked where there was an NPC that said, sorry, you can't go this way, anything. But for the most part, you can just travel the entire world doing side quests, and you do want to, not just if you're interested for the lore of the game, but through the side quests will unlock more dungeons, more locales, and also more units to recruit via the guild. With the side quests, have you help people who will then be an option to recruit, which is also very cool since the side quest people tend to be very good units to recruit. The unit guilds themselves also have their own little tasks that generally are either fetch an item or kill X amount of enemies. They're already simple tasks that you do want to do as well, not only for the reward of doing them, but also increases your ranking with the guild, which means more tasks. And there are also optional guilds that are hidden, which requires you to do certain side quests in order to unlock. So once again, there's just more to uncover. So there's just a lot going on in this game gameplay-wise and what you're able to do. One feature I really like is the fact that when you find an enemy, there's a chance to capture it. You can either immediately split the enemy apart for the materials, or you can keep it fully captured and that becomes a main money method because enemies you capture will sell for a high price, so you can just go around catching enemies or to do that. So that's a cool aspect of how to make it to focus on getting money, being the fact that you can do it for materials or you can do it just for the money to sell later. Rush himself is also very customizable with what abilities he can learn. He can basically become a jack of all trades, but your other party members generally have something they specialize in. But they will also ask you occasionally, what do you think they should focus on for the time being as well, so you do have influence on what skills they prioritize and what abilities they get as well, everything, which is a very cool option to give you a bit more leeway in what you want to do with the units. While the positives out of the way, time for all the negatives the Last Remnant has, such as I mentioned the issue with combat where it can feel random because there's many mechanics in the game itself does not tell you. I had to tell you how the leaders influence what combat abilities they have and everything when it comes to doing combat, because the game doesn't really make that a note that it's the leader who is the one dictating what abilities they'll use. You also have weird quirks where, like I said, the options you are given are automatically selected by the game. You switch enemies and being a near ally, it can shift, such as going from heal yourself to heal an ally if you go to an enemy target that's near your allies. But that's if the enemies are near your allies. You cannot just select go heal your allies because you cannot target them, only the enemies. It's just a weird quirk, on top of the fact that some enemies you attack can just not give you the option to use physical skills or magic skills whatsoever. It's just a weird thing where it does feel like an aspect of combat is just ripped from the player's hands, on top of the fact that you can't select specifically what abilities you want the Union to actually use. There are even certain commands that are specifically designed for certain boss fights that can just not pop up because the game didn't feel like it. I fought a boss where the boss would start puppeteering my dead Unions and use them against me. There's supposed to be a command where you can attack them and then revive them, but for some reason the first two attempts I did the boss fight, it did not give me the option to actually do that, so I didn't know it was a thing until the third attempt and went, where did this come from, and found out it's a mechanic of the boss fight, but the game just didn't give me the prompt in order to actually do it. I mentioned earlier how getting hit by an attack that hits multiple party members at once is very deadly because of the fact of it's hitting everyone, which means each one is now contributing damage to your HP bar. But later on in the game, practically every boss fight just has the ability to pull off a stage-wide attack just out of their butt. Sometimes they can spam it and just annihilate your entire army, because there's no real limit for the game, for the bosses to just not spam it if they feel like it. It is a weird quirk where these devastating attacks can just be done back to back before you even get a chance to heal, because some bosses just have a random chance to do a powerful stage 1 attack at the end of the turn and start of the turn, which means RNG could hit you and have them do both back to back and just kill off your entire army with you not being able to do anything to actually defend against it. This game has infamous difficulty spikes. The difficulty spikes stem from the fact that the bosses can just spam attacks that hit multiple targets or hit multiple unions at once. It's just a quirk of the game. That's the main source of the difficulty. Just try to have your units survive having the boss do this. There's one boss where it's two bosses that can do a team attack, but they can do the team attack regardless if one of them's on the other side of the map and is already in a deadlock, which is complete BS. You also have side quests where for the most part you can find NPCs in the pubs with a red marker. But there are some side quests that require you to recruit a certain unit, and they can cost a lot because units get very costly later in the game, and then you have to increase their friendship rating system or affection meter, which the game never tells you is a thing, which basically requires you just talk to them multiple times, leave the town, go back, talk to them over and over until they're ready to offer up their side quests. It's just an unnecessary thing that the game in no way, shape, or form actually hints is a mechanic of the game, although the fact that to recruit certain people just to end up doing that side quest. Some of them side quests is how you get the hidden guilds, which means more tasks to complete, but it's just a weird quirk where some side quests feel like they're hidden in the most obscure way for no actual reason. This is talk about how much side stuff is missable, where you can miss out on a side quest because you did a different certain side quest before that one. And there was a side quest I wanted to do that required hiring a unit and increasing their affection meter, only to find out their side quest is unavailable because I did a major character side quest before that, and I apparently closed out the side quest. I was like, what? Huh? While Rush is fully customizable from the get-go, your allies will ask for materials in order to actually upgrade their weapons, or may ask for certain weapons you have for themselves to use. The issue with this, the fact that one, the weapons they ask for are random, and sometimes you can ask for a weapon that's not as good as the one I have for some reason, but also because the materials, how you gather them. Because for some reason, you can't just buy materials for your allies, you must specifically hunt or gather them from the dungeons, which also means you need to fight rare monsters that can just not spawn into a locale. I gotta back out in order to get to spawn in. And there was one rare monster I was trying to go after for 2 hours, and it just never spawned into the game at all. It was just like, what's going on? On top of the fact that some of the material your party members can ask for can have a drop rate of 3% as well, so on top of needing to fight a rare monster, it can be rare to even get the item itself. And now here's where the Union Guilds rear their ugly heads. A lot of the rewards they give you are key items that are called Blank Weekly or the Daily Blank. Why does this matter? Is because that's how you get certain material from monsters that you otherwise can't get from them, and there are 2 of these key items per species of monsters. There's a lot of species, so if your character wants a certain material, you need to first do the Unit Guild task, get the key item, and then fight the enemy just to get the enemy with a 30% drop in order to give you that particular item. So it becomes a massive chore just to upgrade your party members, because the stuff they need may require you to do several tasks before you're even allowed to start hunting after the monster in question to upgrade their equipment. The act of improving your party members can be a long task that can have randomness on top of randomness. And then there's the unit guilds. I mentioned they have ranks. The game does not tell you this, because you need to fulfill certain tasks they give you in order to rank up. You can do a bunch of tasks, but if it isn't the one the game specifically deems is the one needed to upgrade, then you're out of luck. The guild's rank will not increase, and there's no indication in the game of which one that is. I eventually managed to actually upgrade one of the ranks, and then I had new quests that were already done. I already did them. And then one of the quests I already did was another one that immediately increased the rank of the guild, meaning I already did the task, but you didn't give me the task in order to upgrade it to be... Why? And because The Last Remnant has the original Xbox 360 release and the remaster, you need to explicitly look up your questions in the fan wiki, which is already a problem if you use a fan wiki or to do basic stuff, but also probably use a fan wiki because wiki sites just operate like trash because of how awful the amount of ads they have on the sites to begin with. But also the fact that you want to try and look up message boards like Reddit or GameFAQs for answers, you're going to find answers that don't apply to your version of the game, or you'll find people who are just as confused as you and end up providing the incorrect answer because they didn't know the actual answer to the question being given, or they'll flag something that's incorrect as the correct thing. It just becomes an entire mess. Not help that many message boards just have people acting weirdly smug that they perfectly understand The Last Remnant and other people don't, and it's like, great, you're not helping the players or reputation of this game. So the fan wiki itself does tell you exactly the information for both versions of the title and makes things clear, even having little navigation points for each map in the game in order to tell you exactly what part of the map will have a certain thing, whether or not where enemy will spawn, where it will spawn, stuff like that. But like I said, that information can only help you so far when whether or not the enemy spawns to begin with, or whether or not you screwed yourself out of a locale because of the fact you did a side quest earlier than the game wanted you to. Your miles may vary. Then on top of the fact that this game doesn't use a regular level up system. When you fight enemies, your units actually just immediately gain stats. Something kind of reminiscent of the Saga franchise. But also the fact that the more enemies you fight, simply the more powerful enemies that you fight, your battle rank will increase. The battle rank at certain intervals will make enemies more difficult. How much more difficult? I actually don't know, but it's basically a method there to make sure you're never truly over-leveling the enemies, specifically the harder ones. It always gives you a challenge. But it's a mechanic that has so much mystery, and the game does not actually tell you how it actually works. And once again, the fan responses have been held. Some say don't let it get too high, some say it doesn't matter, it's fine, some say you can beat the game with a high battle rank, some say you can beat with a low battle rank. I don't know, and neither do you. Now for the game's text, which is pretty bad, because not only is it small, there's also the fact when it comes to cutscenes, there's enough to separate the white text from the background, and they get lost very easily, making it hard to read what the text is saying for the subtitles, depending on the scenario going on. And boy, this game will have many scenarios that take place outdoors in the bright sun, making it difficult to see what's being said when it comes to subtitles. But even worse are the text boxes, which, while they have backgrounds, it makes some weird choices, like sometimes it's just rather small, and for some reason they label the R2 button vertically, like R and then the number 2 below it, rather than depending on how an R2 button would actually look. It's a baffling choice, and since the text was so small, I actually felt at the tutorial I had to jump on enemies because the R2 from a distance looked more like an X button than it did an R2 button. And I looked back at the footage and went, what? Why is the R2 button written like that? Who does that? It's also on top of the small text box at the top that tells you little tidbits about the locale you're in, or the locale you're hovering over on the world map. That's also very tiny, which, you know what, in the world map of all time to spare, that should be an issue. But when you're in a dungeon, if you target an enemy, that will show you the name of the enemy and their aggression level, which you would want to know if you're trying to hunt for rare monsters, since some rare monsters basically look identical to regular monsters, so you don't want to just hit something that turns out to be going to be way more powerful than you. But that little box is also shared with the auto-saving, so it can take a bit before it adjusts to actually showing you the enemy details and stuff like that. It's like, why? Why? Why are you using the shared box? Why? There's also a pet peeve of mine with the UI, but the fact that when you're in combat, it shows you the conditions of all your unions, which is good, but it also shows that your union you're about to give a command to on a bomb left as well, on top of the bar, making it duplicate, which that just irks me. But it's also the fact that after I issue a command to a union, why can't you also display on that HUD what their command is? I'm meant to remember what command they are and who they're targeting manually myself. It's like, you're gonna show the information already on the screen with the union's information. Why not also show me what I already commanded them so I can keep track and know who needs to go where and where if I wanted to split up or attack specifically certain enemy unions? Like, just weird quirks to the UI like that, and the small text that can make one button look a different button annoys me. Overall, I don't like The Last Remnant, because for every cool and unique mechanic it has, with the whole warside RPG, having you fight an entire army, be able to use massive, essentially WMDs on the battlefield and stuff like that, is such cool concept and cool things, but the execution feels like things either weren't fully planned out, which is why I can't fault anyone for the entire game is random when it actually isn't. But even when you know what you're doing, you still don't have full control of what's going on, and the fact that it makes basic tasks just take so long to do for no actual good reason whatsoever. On top of the fact that once you get the battle rank system, you may not want to be constantly fighting every enemy. Hell, a common PSA fans give is to ignore the game's tutorial telling you that chaining battle is a good thing, because people say it's actually a bad thing and don't actually do it. So you need to constantly fight the enemies in order to try and find and get a rare enemy to spawn in becomes kind of a nuisance to get more materials and stuff like that. The material didn't drop, gotta try again. Missing side quests because you did the main story too early, I get that. Missing side quests because you didn't recruit certain people, I get that. Missing a side quest because you didn't recruit a certain person and then increase an affection meter that the game never told me about, that's complete BS. Doing a side quest for a major character and finding out some side character I didn't even know existed as a unit that needed to recruit and do his affection rating turned out locked out his side quest that was also a continuation of a side quest I already did, so why am I locked out of it? Complete BS. Seeing rare enemies that I need to hunt down having several spawn points and one spawn point not working, and going, okay, I'll go to this other spawn point that has less rare enemies so there's less for the game to try and spawn in, it'll probably make it quicker, only to find out the locale is completely unavailable because I didn't do a certain side quest I can no longer do right now, so that entire section of the dungeon is just not available to me. There's just so many things this game does wrong, and it just completely overpowers all the things it does right or uniquely. It's just one of those baffling decisions that feels like a lot of stuff was done to be different for the sake of being different, and rather than it actually making sense with the game going on. I also read how on the delisted PC version, you could just modify the INI file quickly and make it so you can freely customize your party members' equipment, just like how you do for Rush. And it's one of those things where, listen, I don't think that should have been a thing, but the material you need to get didn't need to have so many steps just to still fail in getting the material. Like, I like the idea of getting the material for your party members and then requesting it from you and stuff like that, except they need to shut the hell up with how often they request it. I like the idea, it's just the act of doing it is so painful. So guys, with the Last Remnant, it has good in it, but it's completely buried down by all the bad it does. Alrighty then, good day.